Welcome to part 7 and the final part of the video series, How to Make a Slim Tower. First, I'd like to thank any of you who have been watching this video series from beginning to end. This is the last part. I'd like to thank you all, which is also why I'd like to mention that the magic word is Godzilla. Alright, so if we're going to start filling in these last pieces with putty, first what I'd like to do is describe what we need to do to fill these before I actually start doing the filling. The edge pieces here do not need any sort of filling, simply because they've been just basically stuck in into the epoxy, the two-part epoxy, into the edge pieces. As you can see here, well, maybe you can or can't. Basically, what you want is the epoxy to, of course, sit in like a little cup, and then you drop the edge pieces in. And just to be clear, what you want is you want to be sure that these surfaces here and here are free of any epoxy. No two-part epoxy needs to be here. Also, you don't want any of the epoxy resin that is here to have flowed over the plane of this piece. Simple reason: when pieces rotate against this plane, you don't want them to be interfered with by the epoxy resin that's in here. So just make sure that these areas are clear of any epoxy. Aside from that, these edge pieces are done. The corner pieces, however, do need to be filled in with our two-part epoxy putty. As I said before, in our particular case, or in my particular case, what I'm going to use is the Apoxy Sculpt Superfine White. It costs a little bit more actually than their regular epoxy line, or their epoxy putty line. About, I'd say about 60% more. You don't have to use it, but I like it because it's a really brilliant white color, and it tends to match up with white puzzles pretty good. Their regular white tends not to be as brilliantly white, as you can see with these colors. That's why I don't like using the regular old white for this, which is why I like the superfine white, despite the super white, despite the extra cost. By the way, the Milliput Superfine White is actually the equivalent as well. So if you have that, go ahead and use it. It's a little bit, it's even more expensive than the Apoxy Sculpt Super White. But again, if that's what you have available, then go for it. Or, you know, whatever, use the darker colored epoxy putty like the Magic Sculpt. Okay, so here's the idea. Make yourself a little tool. This is roughly in the shape of my X-Acto blade here, except a little bit finer. And the reason you want it to be finer is because this tool needs to be able to maneuver around these parts of the puzzle, like just like that, without basically dipping too deeply into here. And the reason for that is putty is going to be filled in essentially level with this curve. Okay? So putty will be filled into here, here, packed into this hole here, and primarily to hold the piece in place, the corner piece in place, all the putty will be put into here and flattened out with this tool. And the reason for this tool, or again, in this particular area's case, you can use a wider one, but basically what you're going to do is you're going to pack the putty in, take your tool, fill it in like that, and use this as your level guide to kind of squeeze it in there. Okay? Push that in like that, push the clay in like that, rounding it just like that, and then with this tool again, here, you don't want the putty to mound up and start sticking up out of here. You don't want it to basically break the plane of the surface, where pieces, you know, will rotate against each other. And again, the reason for this tool, you will want to fill the putty in to these cracks as well, all the way around. With this tool, what I like to do is I like to scrape down so that this corner here, that part right there, is just barely exposed, you know, after you've packed in the clay. And the reason for that, again, is when these smaller edge pieces rotate around, you need to make sure that they have a free plane of rotation. That's why this corner here needs to be just clear. Okay? Alright, so as you can see, I've already made one piece. Let me show you really quickly what I did. Took a ball of my putty here, stuck it into here, Just kind of push it down, and again you want to get a little bit extra in here, just like that. Just like that. Let me get this hair out of there. Okay. That looks alright now. Let's take another amount of putty here. Stretch out a little bit. Just like that. And put it around just like that. So now you've pretty much got enough putty to go around for this piece. Now just two little balls, a little bit larger than the size of a pea for each piece. There we go. Alright, time to smooth. We're going to smooth it out with our little plastic piece here that we made. And again, you could certainly make it out of a piece of, you know, junk, fake credit card, whatever you get, whatever you have. Obviously, cardboard won't work so well anymore. So get it wet. Doesn't have to be dripping wet, but you want it to be nice and slick. And now, again, all we're doing here is smoothing out the clay, like so. We don't want it to, you know, run over the edge too much, but if you get a little bit, that's alright. You can still easily wipe it off. What we're doing here is reinforcing the piece. Once this putty dries, of course, this corner piece is not going to get separated from the outside corner piece. That's primarily what we're doing, and we're also filling in the gap so it'll look nice and smooth when the piece is in the mid-turn. Make sure you use your tool here and push down on this clay. Expose that little corner down at the bottom that I said pieces need to float around, and don't be too worried about getting a little bit of, you know, a little bit of debris here on the sides. Just clean it up as best as you can. If you have a little bit left like that, believe me, once you start messing with the puzzle, it'll all get cleaned up. Okay, a little bit more wet. Now, this part in here, the amount of putty that you're shoving into the corner piece itself, what you want to do is you want to get enough putty in here where the piece is thoroughly supported on the inside with putty all the way up to the top wall here. The piece does not need to be entirely filled in with putty, but you do want to get enough in there to make sure that the corner piece, the keychain corner, is supported top to bottom with putty. And that again will lend that piece strength and won't break on you. Pretty much won't break on you ever. And again, I mean, this is just the process that you're going to do. You're going to repeat it for 8 total corner pieces. Here I am mixing more putty. More of my super white epoxy sculpt. It's very sticky stuff. So periodically I do like to get my fingers damp. Helps mixing come along much easier. I don't like mixing large quantities at a time. I like making, you know, I'd say about a, what is that, a 2 lima beans worth of mass maybe. And the reason for that is, of course, that if you're working with a lot of pieces and trying to get them just right, sometimes you'll end up wasting a lot of putty